Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dust-kicked, sandal-strapped world of a Roman soldier's very first march. The kind of day that makes you question every life choice you've ever made. You're not easing into anything. You're thrown straight into heat, weight, and the sudden realization that Roman military recruiters definitely forgot to mention the fine print. You smell leather, sweat, and that chalky Mediterranean dirt that sticks to your teeth like you accidentally tried to chew the road. And somewhere in the back of your mind, the tiny modern part of you whispers, yeah, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're watching right now, tell me your location and your local time in the comments. I always love seeing where everyone is drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward under a sky that feels too bright, the sun practically auditioning for a villain role. The pack digging into your shoulders weighs somewhere between unpleasant and why is this allowed? The Romans call it your sarcina, and it's your new best friend, meaning it will stay with you, irritate you, and never once offer emotional support. A mainstream historical fact, Roman recruits often carried close to 45 to 50 kilograms of gear on training marches, which is about the weight of a very annoyed medium-sized dog made entirely of metal. You feel every piece of it pulling you downward. Tools, cookware, stakes for your tent, a week's worth of rations, spare sandals, and that iron shovel that seems determined to give you permanent spinal opinions. Dust rises in slow waves around you, clinging to the sweat on your arms. You're not just tired, you're confused, because the officers keep shouting cheerful things like, only 20 more miles, as if distance were a fun, optional concept. One centurion, covered in more scars than seems medically necessary, walks with a smug rhythm. He carries nothing, absolutely nothing. Just a stick he uses to tap your shield when he thinks you're slacking, your quirky tidbit for this section. Some centurions were famous for tapping soldiers on the helmet not to encourage them, but to remind them who had all the free time and none of the luggage. You step in rhythm with the line of new recruits. Your calf muscles burn like they're trying to escape your body and start a new life elsewhere. Your sandals scrape through gravel, and it hits you that the road beneath your feet, the famous Roman road network people brag about in documentaries, isn't actually soft or forgiving or pleasant. It's basically an ancient attempt at foot-shaped punishment. Historians still argue whether these punishing first marches were designed to weed out the weak, or simply tradition left, unchecked by empathy. By the 5th mile, the edges of your armor feel sharper. They weren't meant to be comfortable. They were meant to protect you and remind you of your low rank. You watch an older recruit try to discreetly shift his pack to relieve the pressure on his raw shoulders. A legionary behind him mutters, "Don't adjust it. They'll notice." You don't know who they are, but based on the recruit's expression, you assume they have an unhealthy enthusiasm for suffering. Nearby, a mule trots with perfect serenity, carrying practically nothing except its own smugness. You resent the mule, which feels irrational but justified. Another soldier leans toward you and whispers, "They say the first march is the worst." A moment later he adds, "But they also say that about the second one, and the third one, and the time you have to carry a comrade's gear after he passes out." You try to laugh, but it comes out as a wheeze. A gentle joke slips through your exhaustion. You begin keeping a mental list titled, Top 10 Things I'd Rather Carry. So far, a sack of bricks, an angry goose, a fully grown goat wearing chainmail, and your regrets. Hours pass. You lose track of them because time is mostly just pain stretched into linear format. The legion stops only twice, once to drink from a stream that tastes faintly of disappointment, and once because someone fainted dramatically enough to warrant a 5-minute pause. The centurion congratulates the fainting soldier for providing a learning opportunity, then orders everyone to pick up their pace. As you resume plodding forward, the scenery refuses to change much. Shrubs, rocks, and the occasional olive tree that seems to lean your way as if whispering, "Just go home, sweetie." But you can't, because you signed up, or were forced, or got tricked by a recruiter promising steady pay and adventure. Whatever the reason, you're here now, sweating through your tunic, listening to the clatter of equipment like a metallic waterfall. Someone in the line suggests starting a marching song. Another soldier immediately shuts it down with, "Don't give the centurion ideas." You don't fully understand that response until half an hour later, when the centurion himself starts chanting in a rhythmical cadence that is 90% motivational and 10% psychological warfare. Everyone repeats it because refusing isn't an option. You feel like you've joined the world's most intense, least fun fitness class. Toward the end of the day, your steps become automatic. You're not walking, you're surviving gravity. The centurion finally shouts for a halt. The line collapses like a row of exhausted dominoes. Your legs tremble. The heat clings to you like an unwelcome blanket. And just when you think you might sit, breathe, maybe even exist without suffering, he tells you it's time to set up camp. You realize this wasn't a march. It was the warm-up to more work. Welcome to the Roman army. You're still catching your breath from that first brutal march when you finally take a moment to really feel the armor strapped to your body and immediately regret paying attention to it. Because the thing about Roman armor, especially for someone at your rank, is, well, it doesn't fit. Not properly, not comfortably, not in any universe that values human skin. You shift your shoulders, hoping the metal will settle into a nicer position, but it responds by digging even harder into the tender spot just beneath your collarbone. The segmented plates of the lorica segmentata creak with every move, reminding you that you're wearing something designed by someone who definitely never intended to wear it themselves. A mainstream historical fact floats through your mind. Roman armor could weigh around 10 to 20 kilograms depending on the style, and recruits didn't get custom fittings. They just got whatever pieces were lying around that looked close enough, and close enough now translates to slowly sanding your ribcage. You shift again. Bad idea. The metal bites into your side like it's offended by your existence. You look around and see other recruits having similar private crises. One man repeatedly shrugs his shoulders like he's trying to detach them. Another is fiddling with a leather strap that seems determined to strangle him. A younger recruit, probably still wondering how he got here, whisper groans, "It's like wearing a very angry turtle." You consider this. He's not wrong. You feel sweat forming beneath the plates, hot, sticky, trapped sweat that has nowhere to go. Roman armor isn't breathable. It's more like walking around in your own portable oven. And because you march for miles before this moment, everything beneath the metal is tender, rubbed raw, or outright mutinous. Your tunic clings to you, soaked with a mixture of sweat and dust, forming a kind of gritty paste that wants to become part of your long-term personality. Is that a joke? Maybe, but it's also accurate. Your centurion passes by, eyeing each soldier with silent disappointment, as if your suffering personally inconveniences him. He stops in front of you, taps the top of your helmet with his vine stick, bonk, and says nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's your quirky tidbit. Roman centurions were infamous for whacking soldiers on the helmet as a form of non-verbal correction, partly because it made a loud, satisfying clang that amused them. He moves on without breaking stride. Your ears ring. You take a slow, bracing breath and try loosening one strap on your cuirass. The moment you do, another part shifts and pinches a chunk of skin near your ribs. You gasp quietly, like someone who just bit into ice cream too fast but can't admit it. The armor's message is clear. You adjust nothing. I adjust you. Nearby, the veteran assigned to watch over your group chuckles at the sight of all the wincing, squirming recruits. He gestures to his own beat-up armor, the edges smoothed from years of the use, leather straps replaced a dozen times, dents hammered flat so often the metal looks tired. Yours will feel better in a few years, he says, if you survive long enough to break it in. You blink. A few years? The armor needs years to stop chewing on your torso? You wonder if you chose the wrong profession, or the wrong century, or the wrong universe. A fly lands on your cheek. You don't have the energy to care. Someone complains under their breath. Why can't they just make armor that fits? The veteran shrugs. Historians still argue whether the army deliberately issued poorly fitting equipment to toughen you up, or whether the quartermasters simply couldn't be bothered. You decide both explanations feel equally tragic. You run a hand over the metal plates, noticing how each one overlaps with precision that feels admirable until it starts stabbing you. The edges grind together whenever you twist, creating a soft metallic scrape, like a tiny sword fight happening somewhere on your torso. When you breathe deeply, the armor tightens subtly, reminding you of its absolute dominance over your comfort levels. You attempt a small experiment, lifting your arms, immediate regret. The edges of the plating dig up into your armpits, an area no armor should ever explore. "Don't raise your arms," the veteran calls out without even looking at you. You lower them quickly. Around you, the camp buzzes with activity. Recruits hammering tent stakes, others collecting firewood, some arguing over whose shield is heavier, spoiler, they are all heavy, and through it all, you're stuck in a metal shell that fights you every time you try to do anything useful. Bending, pain, reaching, pain, turning your head, somehow still pain because the cheek guards on your helmet pinch your jaw like a passive-aggressive grandmother. You're tempted to remove the whole outfit just to breathe freely, but the Centurion has already announced that anyone caught without armor during camp setup will spend the evening digging extra trenches. Your shovel weighs almost as much as your regrets, so you keep the armor on. You try kneeling to help raise a tent pole. The bottom edge of the cuirass digs into your stomach, pushing all the air out of you in a single sad doof. A soldier next to you snorts. "Armor's training you," he says. You reply, "Training me to stop moving entirely?" He nods solemnly. "Exactly." As night falls, the metal cools, but not in a comforting way. It's a damp, clingy cold that sticks to your skin. You know you'll sleep in it tonight, because taking it off means more punishment. You lie down on your straw mat, the plates pressing awkwardly into your ribs, hips, spine, and dreams. You breathe out, long and slow. Your armor creaks. It is not a friendly creak. Somewhere beyond the campfire, a wolf howls. Someone mutters, "Lucky wolf." You close your eyes, letting exhaustion pull you downward, and try to pretend that tomorrow the armor might magically soften or fit better, or stop grinding your will to live into powder. It won't. But you can dream. Morning comes far too soon. Not gently, not kindly, more like a rough shove from the universe reminding you that sleep is a fragile privilege in the Roman army. You wake to the sound of horns, clattering shields, and someone complaining loudly that something crawled into his sandal during the night. Your stomach already growls, but not with excitement. It's reacting preemptively to the Roman military rations you're about to face. You sit up, feeling every complaint your body has stored overnight. The armor, your clingy, codependent enemy, is still cold and stiff around you, but your mind is already drifting to food, because the promise of breakfast is the only thing keeping you from staging a very tiny, very unsuccessful rebellion. Then you remember what breakfast actually is: Roman rations. A mainstream historical fact. The standard legionary diet revolved around wheat, more wheat, and, if the gods were in a playful mood, some wheat with a side of slightly different wheat. You're handed a chunk of hardtack-style bread that could also double as a siege weapon. It's dense, dry, and has the energy of something baked not by a cheerful cook, but by a disappointed carpenter. You take a bite. Correction. You attempt to take a bite. Your teeth protest instantly. Dip it in water, a veteran advises. You do. It still tastes like someone asked, "What if sadness had a flavor?" Another soldier chews so slowly you can practically hear his soul exiting his body. As bland as the bread is, it's technically the most reliable part of your diet. Everything else depends on luck, geography, and whether the quartermaster has decided to hate you that week. You watch as a pot of morning porridge bubbles over the fire. Calling it porridge is generous. It's more like warm beige glue. But at least it's edible, mostly. One recruit sniffs it and says, "Smells like last night's bathwater." Another replies, "Luxury. My bathwater never smelled this good." While you eat, or try to, you eye the small ration of sour wine issued for the day. Not the nice kind. No Roman soldier is sipping from a vintage amphora. This is the kind that tastes like someone fermented regret. The quirky tidbit here: Roman legionaries sometimes diluted their sour wine with vinegar water mixes called posca, which somehow managed to taste both worse and better at the same time. You swirl the cup. It smells faintly like a cleaning product. You drink it anyway. As the morning routines continue, you notice soldiers comparing their food allotments, complaining about weevils, and arguing about whether the porridge has more lumps than usual. Someone mutters, "I swear the quartermaster feeds us less every week." The veteran shrugs. Historians still argue whether ration shortages were due to corruption or just terrible logistics. You personally suspect both. You're not even halfway through your sad breakfast when a centurion shouts, "Pack up!" To him, the word breakfast is a concept best experienced quickly and with minimal chewing. You stuff the remaining bread into your pouch. It lands with a thud heavy enough to startle a nearby mule. As you break camp, you notice soldiers trying to stretch their meager food supplies in creative ways. One man toasts his bread over the fire until it softens slightly, not enough to make it good, but enough to make it less similar to rock. Another crushes a handful of grain, mixes it with water, and calls it innovation. A third brags he once found a dead fish on the riverbank and called it a festival. The more dramatic recruits talk about legendary feasts they'll have one day. Roasted boar, cheese that isn't suspiciously warm, olives that don't taste like brine-soaked disappointment. You quietly fantasize about honey, fresh fruit, anything not beige. The march begins again, and your stomach grumbles louder than the horns. The bread sits like a brick inside you. A soldier walking beside you says, "At least the food at home was worse." You raise an eyebrow. He sighs. "Fine, it wasn't worse. I miss my mother's stew so much it hurts." But hunger does something strange to the mind. After a few hours of marching, you swear the dry bread in your pouch begins smelling almost appealing. You pull it out, take a cautious bite, and realize, nope, still terrible. But food isn't just physical survival. It's routine. It grounds you. And as miserable as the rations are, you begin learning their rhythms. The porridge that's too hot, the bread that can break a table, the watery wine that grows on you the same way fungus grows on abandoned fruit. By midday, a rumor spreads through the column. Tonight there might be meat. Actual meat. No one knows if it's true. No one knows where it would come from. But the rumor spreads like wildfire. You watch grown men debate passionately about whether it will be pork or goat, as if they're scholars writing treatises. The hope alone seems to lift spirits. Then the veteran crushes it with a single sentence. Don't listen to them. Last time we had meat, it was a pigeon that died in camp. So you temper your expectations. Evening approaches. Everyone is starving again. Fires are lit. Porridge thickens. Breadcrumbs scatter. And finally, a soldier shouts, "Meat! They actually brought meat." You rush to look. It's a single small piece of salted pork per man. Barely enough to taste, barely enough to matter, but it feels like the gods themselves have descended. You hold your precious bit of pork over the fire like it's a sacred ritual. It sizzles faintly, the sound of hope. The smell hits your nose and for a moment you almost cry. You eat it in one bite. It's incredible. Or maybe you're just starving. As you lie down that night, hunger still gnawing but spirit slightly lifted, you realize the truth. Roman rations don't keep you satisfied. They keep you going. Just enough to march. Just enough to fight. Just enough to survive. Barely. And tomorrow breakfast will still taste like sadness. The morning horn hasn't even finished echoing when you're already standing in formation again, biting back a groan because today, like every day, you face drill. Endless, repetitive, bone-deep drills that make you question whether the Roman army is trying to prepare you for battle or simply erase your individuality through the power of synchronized misery. You grip your shield. It feels heavier today, though it always feels heavier. Your gladius hangs at your hip with the energy of a judgmental supervisor. A mild breeze carries the smell of dust and sweat across the training field, and somewhere a mule brays as if mocking your life choices. "Testudo formation!" the centurion bellows. You and your fellow recruits shuffle into position, shields lifting overhead in a clattering chorus. The formation looks impressive in carvings and documentaries, but in real life it's mostly you trying not to smack someone in the face with a 10-kilogram wooden slab. A mainstream historical fact flashes through your mind. Roman soldiers practice formation drills so obsessively that some commanders claim their troops could march in a storm or fight in total darkness without losing rank order. This sounds inspirational until you realize it just means endless repetition. And pain. Mostly pain. You brace your shield and feel someone's shield edge press into the back of your skull. "That's my head," you mutter. "I know," the soldier behind you says. "Mine's slipping." There is no safe follow-up question. You hold the formation. The sun beats down. The shield vibrates every time someone shifts. Your arm begins to tremble. Your entire shoulder joint feels like it's plotting revenge. And still the centurion walks around examining angles like an architect with trust issues. After what feels like ages, he blows the whistle. "Drop shields!" Every recruit exhales sharply, the sound of collective relief mixed with despair. Then he adds, "Again." Of course he does. As you raise your shield for the 9th, 10th, maybe 20th time, a soldier beside you whispers, "This is punishment. It has to be." The veteran supervising your cohort overhears and shakes his head. "No, lads, punishment is extra drill." Your heart sinks at the idea that this could get worse. When you break formation, the next round begins, weapon drills. The centurion lines everyone up, hands behind backs, and inspects swords. He taps one soldier's blade with his vine stick and sneers, "Dirty." The soldier replies, "Sir, the dust." Whack. Apparently dust is not a recognized concept. You practice thrusting forward again and again. "Not slashing," the centurion shouts. "You are Romans, not barbarians." You thrust until your arm feels numb. The blade becomes an extension of your frustration, stabbing the air repeatedly like you're arguing with a ghost. Your quirky tidbit arrives courtesy of an older soldier who leans over and says, You know they used to train with swords twice as heavy? To make real fighting feel easier, you stare at him. This isn't the heavy one." He shakes his head sympathetically. You consider crying. Next to shield drills, you learn quickly that Roman shields aren't just for blocking. They're for bashing, shoving, and occasionally getting smacked in the face by a buddy who hasn't mastered spatial awareness. You and the recruit next to you accidentally slam shields together so hard you both stagger backward. "Good," the centurion shouts. "Use that power against the enemy." You're too busy trying to regain your balance to argue. Hours pass. Time becomes measured only by the ache in your knees and the burning in your shoulders. When you finally pause for water, you don't sip. You chug like someone drinking hope. But the break ends fast. Next comes spear throwing. You grip the pilum, a weapon famously designed to bend on impact so enemies couldn't throw it back. This is clever. This is brilliant. This is very inconvenient if you can't throw it straight. Your first attempt doesn't go well. The spear leaves your hand in a slightly tragic wobble and lands short with a soft, unimpressive thud. A soldier nearby says, "That pilum died of embarrassment." You mutter, "I'm right behind it." The centurion glares but moves on. The veteran pats your shoulder. "Better than my first throw. Mine hit me in the foot." You appreciate the honesty. You do not appreciate the mental image. As the sun climbs higher, heat shimmers across the training ground. Sweat drips down your neck, mixing with dust until you look like a breaded cutlet. You keep drilling, marching forward, stepping back, rotating in formation, repeating commands until they lose all meaning. "Historians still argue," the veteran announces dramatically during a break, wiping dust from his brow, "whether the Romans trained this hard out of genuine military genius, or because the officers needed entertainment." You take another drink and think both explanations feel valid. By midday your muscles are trembling, your legs feel hollow, and your hands are shaking from gripping weapons too long. The drills continue until the centurion finally calls off the session. You nearly drop your shield in relief. But here's the secret you don't want to admit. Somewhere in the misery, something changed. Your movement is smoother, your reactions are faster, your shield doesn't feel quite as foreign, and your gladius no longer feels like a stranger at your side. You're still exhausted, still miserable, still wondering who invented ancient push-ups and why they hated humanity. But the rhythm of the legion is starting to seep into your bones. As evening settles, you lie down on your straw mat, sore in places you didn't know existed. The campfires crackle softly. Your armor rests beside you, still intimidating, still uncomfortable, but just slightly less alien. You close your eyes, dreading the next drill, but also knowing this is how Rome forges its soldiers, not through inspiration, but repetition. Endless, exhausting, soul-crushing repetition. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. You'd think, after a full day of marching and drilling, that camp life would offer at least a sliver of comfort, some gentle reward for all the misery you've endured, maybe a quiet moment, maybe a chance to sit down without something stabbing you, maybe even, dare you imagine it, rest. You're wrong, spectacularly wrong. Because Roman camp life is not rest. Roman camp life is just work wearing a slightly different outfit. As soon as the marching horn fades, the centurion shouts orders, and the entire column snaps into motion like bees kicked out of a hive. You're tired, sweaty, hungry, and mentally negotiating with your legs just to keep moving. But none of that matters. Camp needs to be built. every single night, from scratch. A mainstream historical fact. Roman armies built fortified camps daily, even on short stops, complete with trenches, ramparts, palisades, and perfectly aligned rows of tents. It was an architectural performance, beautiful from a historian's perspective, terrible from yours. You grab your shovel. It feels heavier than your shield, heavier than your regrets, heavier than every promise you made to yourself before joining. The ground is hard, packed, and uncooperative. As you dig, the earth seems to mock you by refusing to leave the hole willingly. Dirt clings to the blade like it's shy. Faster, a centurion shouts. You consider throwing your shovel at him. You do not, because you enjoy breathing. Recruits around you dig trenches that will serve as defensive lines. Others hammer in tent stakes that refuse to stay straight. Someone drops a mallet on their foot and lets out a sound that is technically PG-13 but pushes the boundaries. No one pauses to comfort him. There is no time. That's deep enough, the veteran supervising you announces, peering into your trench. You stop digging. Then he adds, "Just kidding, keep going." Your soul deflates like a sad wineskin. Nearby, two soldiers argue about where the tent corners should align. Roman camps are famously organized, a grid, a layout, a masterpiece of military engineering. But you're discovering the painful truth. The real reason Roman camps looked perfect is because soldiers were bullied into achieving perfection. Your quirky tidbit comes courtesy of a soldier who leans over and whispers, "Before I joined, I thought soldiers spent evenings drinking around a fire. Turns out that's only in plays. Out here, the only thing that drinks is the ground, your sweat." You haul another basket of soil out of the trench. A centurion walks by and frowns at your work as if the trench personally offended him. "This slope is wrong," he says. "Do it again." He walks away. You reconsider every decision you've ever made. Once the trenches are finished, or finished enough to avoid punishment, you move on to tent duty. Your tent group works together to raise a leather shelter that smells like damp goats and past mistakes. The ropes tangle, the stakes bend, the leather refuses to cooperate. Someone mutters, "Why does the tent lean?" Another responds, "Because it's tired, like me." A third adds, "Like Rome itself." The veteran taps the tent pole with the end of his spear. "Straighten it," he says. "How?" "By straightening it." Profound. As the sun sinks behind the hills, the camp begins to take form. Rows of tents, cooking fires flickering, the faint sound of soldiers cursing in a dozen languages. Smoke rises into the air, carrying the smell of porridge, wood, and frustration. Just when you think you might finally get a moment to sit, the next task arrives, collecting firewood. You wander into the scrubland outside camp with a handful of other recruits. One soldier trips over a rock and swears that the rock moved deliberately. Another insists he saw a wolf earlier. A third keeps stopping to snack on the dry bread he saved from breakfast, occasionally breaking off a piece to throw at trees in anger. You gather sticks, twigs, branches, anything that burns. You bring it back to camp. The centurion inspects your bundle and says, "More." You go out again. Historians still argue whether this endless cycle of chores was meant for discipline or simply because the officers didn't want to do anything themselves. By the time you return again, the sky is dark and your stomach is growling loud enough to be classified as a threat. Fires crackle. A thin, questionable stew simmers in a dented pot. You sit near your unit, watching the flames dance while your armor pinches your ribs because it refuses to let you forget its existence. You try to relax. You really try. But the camp is noisy. Soldiers talking, laughing, arguing, sharpening blades, coughing, singing badly, snoring loudly, telling exaggerated stories about battles they definitely didn't fight in. The night alive with motion and sound, everything buzzing, everything clattering. A man next to you sighs dramatically. "I miss silence." Another replies, "I miss dignity." The third adds, "I miss my bed." You add, "I miss my spine." The veteran, stirring the pot of stew, overhears and chuckles. "This is what the historians never write about," he says. "The work between the work." You sip your wine water mix. It's terrible. Someone coughs in the next tent loud enough to rattle the canvas. Another soldier practices thrusting his spear, nearly impaling someone's shoe. Finally, you slip into your tent. Your body aches. Your clothes are stiff with sweat and dust. Your shoulders feel crooked. Your eyelids droop. You lie down on your straw mat, which is 30% straw, 30% bugs, and 40% regret. A mule brays. A soldier snores. Someone outside shouts, "Who stole my spoon?" Someone else replies, "Check the trench." Laughter erupts. You exhale. A long, tired, defeated breath. Camp life isn't rest. Camp life is survival between obligations. But somehow, you drift off anyway. You wake to the kind of cold that doesn't just touch your skin, it claims it. The kind of cold that seeps through your tunic, wiggles under your armor, and settles into your bones with a smug little grin. A few hours ago, the night was warm enough that you considered sleeping without your cloak. Now, you're wondering if the gods flipped some sort of divine weather switch just to torment you. Because today, you discover one of the biggest, quietest miseries Roman soldiers endured. The weather hates you. All of it. Always. You crawl out of the tent, rubbing your arms. The ground crunches beneath your sandals. Frost. You blink. You hadn't mentally prepared for frost. Yesterday felt like summer. Today feels like winter. Tomorrow? Probably fire. Rome likes variety. A mainstream historical fact slips into your tired mind. Roman soldiers marched and fought through every climate the empire controlled. Burning deserts, freezing highlands, swampy riverlands, foggy forests. And no matter where they went, the uniform barely changed. A wool tunic, some leather straps, metal armor that conducts cold magnificently, like a portable freezer pressed to your chest. The veteran stomps past you, teeth chattering. "Welcome to the Empire," he mutters. "Our weather is as stable as our politics." You laugh weakly. Your breath comes out as a tiny cloud. As morning drills begin, the metal plates of your cuirass freeze against your skin. You jerk instinctively. Someone nearby yelps as their helmet, which sat outside overnight, slams down like a block of ice. Another soldier hops in place trying to warm his toes, muttering curses in a language you don't recognize but deeply agree with. But cold is only one enemy. You'll soon meet the others. By mid-morning, the frost melts, and the temperature launches upward like it's racing to win a bet. Your breath stops puffing white. Sweat starts to bead. The sun climbs. The ground softens. Within an hour, the cold morning becomes a sticky, suffocating heat. Someone groans. "We live in a weather nightmare." Your quirky tidbit arrives courtesy of a soldier fanning himself with his shield. Some Romans believed wearing amulets made of specific stones could reduce heat exhaustion in battle. You glance at him. He's drenched in sweat. The stone is doing absolutely nothing. The centurion orders the column to march because of course he does. You move forward through rising heat and thickening dust. Sweat trickles down your back, trapped beneath your armor. Your tunic clings to your skin like wet cloth bandages. The sun beams directly into your eyes with malicious enthusiasm. By noon, the heat is intolerable. Every soldier's pace slows. Your sandals slip slightly on the warming earth. Your throat feels like sandpaper. Even the mules look offended. Historians still argue whether the legions intentionally pushed recruits through extreme weather to simulate battlefield conditions, or because the scheduling officer simply didn't believe in looking out a window. A mile later, a cloud rolls in. A small breeze picks up. You exhale in relief. And then the sky opens and dumps a full ocean onto your head. Instant downpour. Your armor becomes slick. Your cloak soaks instantly, turning heavy as a wet rug. The road transforms into a sloppy, boot-sucking swamp. The mud grabs your sandals like it's trying to drag you into an early grave. Each step makes a sound like a sad kiss. A soldier beside you slips, falls, and just lies there for a moment, staring at the sky as if negotiating with whichever deity controls weather. "Tell Jupiter I'm sorry for whatever I did," he whispers. Your pack grows heavier as the rain seeps into everything. The tent leather absorbs water like a thirsty camel. Tools clank with wet metallic sadness. You feel 10 pounds heavier and also 10% angrier. The centurion stomps past, somehow unfazed, water dripping dramatically from his helmet. "Keep marching," he shouts, as if anyone was considering stopping to enjoy a picnic. By late afternoon, the rain stops. The mud remains. Your boots squelch with every step, creating a rhythm of squish-squelch regret. When you finally arrive at the next campsite, the wind picks up, a sharp, slicing gust that cuts through your damp clothing. The combination of wet and cold is so miserable it feels illegal. One soldier tries to dry his cloak by the fire. It smokes, it does not dry. Another holds out his sandals only to watch them steam like angry pancakes. The veteran walks by, shaking his head. "This is nothing," he says. "Wait until we reach the mountains." You stare at him in horror. Mountains? You cannot handle mountains. Mountains are cold, windy, steep, and disrespectful. That night, as the wind howls and your tent flaps violently like it's trying to escape, you lie on your straw mat, wrapped in your damp cloak, armor piled beside you in a grumpy metallic heap. The cold creeps in again, slow, persistent, unforgiving. Your legs ache from marching. Your arms ache from digging trenches. Your skin aches from rubbing against cold metal. Your entire body feels like a complaint written in flesh. But there is something strangely honest about this misery. Roman soldiers didn't fight weather, they endured it. They pushed through the desert heat that dried their lips until they cracked. They survived northern winters where the wind felt sharp enough to cut. They marched through rain, storms, fog, sleet, and sun that could melt your thoughts. And now, so do you. You curl deeper into your cloak, trying to find warmth that isn't there. The wind sighs through the camp, and the dying fire casts a trembling glow across the tent. Tomorrow might be hot. Tomorrow might be freezing. Tomorrow might rain sideways for no reason. But you'll still march. Because Rome doesn't care about the weather, only that you keep going. You'd think the weather would be the worst part of this life. But no. Because as the days pass, you discover a far more insidious enemy. One that strikes when the sun is high, the camp is quiet, and your body is too tired to complain. Boredom. The kind that crawls under your skin and settles in like an unwanted roommate. You wake to the usual morning chaos, but once drills finish and chores are done, the hours begin to stretch, slowly, painfully, in a way that feels like time itself is dragging its heels. You sit near the tent, sharpening your gladius even though it doesn't really need sharpening. You poke at the dirt with a stick. You stare at a pebble for longer than any rational person should. A mainstream historical fact flickers through your mind. Roman soldiers spent far more time waiting than fighting. Days, weeks, even months could pass with no battle, no action, no excitement, just repetition and uneasy stillness. And while Hollywood shows battles every 10 minutes, real legionaries spent far more time being bored out of their minds. A soldier nearby sighs dramatically and drops onto the ground. "If I stare at this wall any longer," he murmurs, "I'm going to learn its secrets." The veteran looks up from repairing his sandal and nods approvingly. "That's good. If the wall tells you anything important, let us know." You chuckle. Weakly, because you get it. You really do. After chores, after drills, after repairs, there's nothing left to distract you. No games, no taverns, no music except someone humming off key, no town to wander, just the camp and your thoughts, and that's the danger. The human mind does strange things when deprived of stimulation. You start noticing everything, every insect crawling through the grass, every pebble shape, every distant bird call, every soldier repeating the same dull routines. Someone throws stones at a tree stump and declares it training. Another soldier plucks strands of hay from the ground and arranges them into artistic shapes that absolutely no one appreciates. A third has spent the last hour carving a face into a piece of wood and named it Marcus the Board. Your quirky tidbit arrives courtesy of a murmured conversation near the fire. A few legionaries claim boredom was so severe on long campaigns that soldiers invented odd superstitions just to pass the time, like counting birds for omens or carving symbols into tent poles or naming their weapons after ex-lovers. The man beside you nods at your gladius. "What's yours named?" You blink. "Named? It's a sword," he pats you sympathetically. "You're new. You'll get there." As the hours drag on, the silence becomes a strange kind of noise, soft, heavy, persistent. You watch the horizon. Nothing. Just rolling land and distant trees. A few soldiers argue over whether the clouds look like animals, weapons, or food. One swears he sees a loaf of bread. Another insists it's a goat. You stare. It's definitely just a cloud. Someone proposes arm wrestling. Someone else proposes napping. Someone else proposes staring at a random spot until you reach enlightenment. And through it all, the minutes slip like syrup. The veteran sits down next to you, picking dirt from under his nails. This is the part no one warns you about, he says. The waiting, you ask? He nods. Battles are terrifying, marches are exhausting, but boredom breaks more men than swords. You raise an eyebrow, he shrugs. Historians still argue whether troops on long frontier assignments went half mad from isolation, or if they were already half mad from the recruitment process. It's meant as a joke, but it lands uncomfortably close to truth. Later in the day, the Centurion tries to motivate everyone with a surprise inspection. It's supposed to break the monotony, but instead it just makes every soldier groan in unison. You stand at attention while he scrutinizes your gear, lifts your shield and taps your helmet like he's checking melons at a market. Finally he moves on. You sigh with relief, and then, you guessed it, nothing happens again. You toss a rock gently from hand to hand. You doodle lines in the dirt with your sandal. You watch a beetle crawl across your boot. For a brief, terrifying moment, you consider talking to the beetle. A recruit plops down beside you. Do you ever feel your brain melting? He asks. Yes, you reply immediately, because that's exactly how it feels. He sighs. I miss chaos. At least chaos was interesting. You nod slowly. You're starting to miss anything that isn't this slow, creeping nothingness. As the sun dips and the heat softens, the camp finally stirs. Dinner is prepared. Singing breaks out. Someone tells a story about a ghost in a latrine. Another soldier confidently presents a carved spoon that is deeply, spectacularly lopsided. For a few hours, boredom lifts its heavy hand. But when you lie down on your straw mat again, listening to distant snores and the soft crackle of embers, you realize something important. The Roman army doesn't just test your strength, or your endurance, or your courage. It tests your patience mercilessly. Because in this world, the silence between battles is sometimes louder than the battles themselves. You close your eyes, knowing tomorrow may hold more waiting, more stillness, more nothing. Strangely, that might be harder than fighting. You're sitting beside the morning fire, half awake, poking at a sad bowl of porridge, when a shout pierces the camp. Form up! It's not urgent, it's not panicked, it's worse, calm, controlled, and brimming with the promise of misery. Because today, you learn firsthand that Roman discipline isn't just strict, it's terrifyingly creative. You scramble to your feet, nearly spilling your breakfast, which honestly wouldn't have been a tragic loss. The Centurion stalks across the camp like a storm cloud wearing sandals. Every soldier immediately straightens, shoulders back, chins up, expressions neutral. You do the same, though your tunic is halfway tucked and your hair is doing whatever it wants. A mainstream historical fact slides uncomfortably into your mind. Roman military discipline was so severe that punishments could include beatings, forfeiture of rations, additional labour, loss of pay, or, in the worst cases, the infamous decimation. You try not to think about that last one too much. Anything that ends with ation and begins with decim is automatically bad. The Centurion stops in front of your contubernium, your small squad. His eyes narrow. This tent row, he says slowly, is crooked. You blink. You look at the row. It is crooked. Barely. Like a single finger's width out of alignment. But that's enough. Double digging duty, he declares. A collective groan ripples down the line. You try to keep your face neutral, but something must twitch because the Centurion steps directly in front of you. You, he says, tapping your helmet with his vine stick. Bonk. Did I see you grimace? No, sir, you reply. Good. Wouldn't want to add another punishment. He moves on. Your soul re-enters your body. As soon as the inspection ends, punishment begins. You and your group pick up shovels and begin expanding the perimeter trenches. Again. The morning sun isn't even warm yet, and you're already sweating like someone being interrogated. A soldier beside you mutters, "This is because Publius over there can't measure straight." Publius sighs miserably. It was dark. It was evening. It was almost dark. You keep digging, and digging, and digging. The veteran supervising you smirks. This is nothing. Back in Britannia, my unit dug so many trenches we started naming them. You pause. You named holes in the ground? He nods. My favourite was treacherous Marcus. It kept collapsing on us. You stare at him. He is not joking. But today's misery is only just beginning. After digging duty, you're sent to carry heavy stones for reinforcing the camp wall. After that, you scrub rust off equipment until your arms throb. After that, the centurion orders the entire sentry to stand in formation under the sun because someone, no one will admit who, left their sandals in the latrine. You stand there sweating, shifting, breathing very carefully because Roman officers have the uncanny ability to detect size. "Don't lock your knees," the veteran whispers. "You'll faint." You immediately unlock your knees. A quirky tidbit emerges from the man next to you who murmurs, "I heard in one legion they punished lateness by making the offender stand outside camp wearing only his helmet." You wince. "That sounds humiliating," he nods. "And cold, mostly cold." The centurion walks by, inspecting posture. You hold perfectly still. He stops. You stop breathing. Finally he moves on. Time crawls. Your back aches. Your helmet shifts and pinches your forehead. Sweat drips into your eyes with the subtlety of acid. Someone a few rows down begins quietly humming out of boredom. "Stay silent," the centurion roars. The humming dies immediately. Historians still argue whether this level of discipline produced elite cohesion or simply traumatized the entire military. Probably both. Finally, the centurion dismisses the formation. You sag like a wilted plant. But the day isn't over, because after lunch, if you can call 2 bites of bread and sad wine lunch, the worst punishment appears. Fustuarian practice. Not the real one, thank the gods, but drills meant to remind soldiers what happens if they desert, steal, or fall asleep on watch. The centurion lectures with unsettling enthusiasm, gesturing at a wooden post meant to represent the condemned. "Let this be a lesson," he says. "A sleeping guard endangers everyone." One recruit whispers nervously, "Does anyone actually get this punishment?" The veteran nods grimly. "Saw it once. Don't ask." You decide not to ask. For the rest of the afternoon, the centurion finds new, inventive ways to make your life worse. You haul water, you move crates, you reorganize gear, you scrub pots, you carry logs, you carry more logs, you carry logs that look suspiciously like the same ones you carried earlier. At one point, the centurion stops you and says, "Why are you carrying that log?" You blink. "You told me to." He frowns. "I didn't mean that log." You stare at the log. It stares back. You put it down. As sunset approaches, you drag your exhausted body toward the fire. Your hands are blistered. Your shoulders ache. Your legs feel like wet cloth. And your mind repeats the same phrase over and over. "Do not commit a punishable offense. Do not commit a punishable offense. Do not..." A soldier beside you suddenly stands up and shouts, "Who stole my spoon?" You silently pray this does not become a punishable offense. The veteran sits down next to you, handing you a small cup of barely drinkable wine. "Remember this," he says quietly. "The punishments keep the legion alive. Not happy, not comfortable, just alive." You sip the wine. It tastes like vinegar and despair. But as you stare into the campfire, exhaustion settling across your bones, you realize something. You fear the centurion more than the enemy, and that's exactly how Rome likes it. Your legs already feel shaky when dawn creeps over the horizon, shaky in that soft, traitorous way that tells you the world is about to become very unkind. You try to stand, and your calves fire off a protest so sharp it nearly folds you back onto the ground. But the horn blows, and in the Roman army a horn might as well be a divine decree. You shoulder your gear, your pack feels heavier than yesterday, your armor pinches the same raw spots, your sandals. Well, your sandals have become suggestions of footwear rather than actual support, because today you're about to learn one of the most universal truths of legionary life. No matter how broken your feet are, you march anyway. A mainstream historical fact presses itself into your thoughts as you limp into formation. Roman legions often marched 15-20 miles a day, sometimes more, often on uneven terrain, and always carrying loads that would make a pack mule reconsider its career. The Roman army adored efficiency. Your joints did not. You take your first step. It hurts. You take your second step. It hurts more. By the 10th step, you're convinced your feet have become two separate independent tragedies. The soldier next to you mutters, "My sandals died days ago. I'm just dragging their corpses at this point." You look down. Yeah, accurate. The route begins uphill, because of course it does. The centurion shouts the pace. and it is absolutely unreasonable for anyone whose lower limbs are attached to their bodies. Every incline feels like a personal attack. Gravel slides under your soles. The edges of your sandals rub your heels until the skin feels like it's peeling. Your toes throb. Your ankles wobble. After the first mile, the blisters announce themselves. After the second mile, the blisters become your entire personality. A quirky tidbit floats to you, courtesy of the veteran trudging ahead. Some soldiers stuffed grass inside their sandals for cushioning. Didn't work, just made crunchy blisters. You grimace. He adds, "Others walked barefoot when their sandals broke." You stare at him. "You're lying," you say. He shakes his head. "Nope, saw it myself. Barefoot, on Roman roads. Hard, unforgiving stone designed by engineers with strong opinions about durability. You pray your sandals hang on a little longer. By mid-morning, the column is a symphony of misery. Grunts, groans, muttered curses, and the occasional yelp when someone steps on a sharp pebble. One soldier hobbles with such a pronounced limp that he looks like he's performing interpretive dance. Another keeps stopping to adjust what's left of his sandal straps until the centurion screams, "Keep moving or I will remove your feet for you." You do not stop. Your pack digs into your shoulders more with every step. Sweat trickles down your spine, but you barely notice because your feet are too busy sending urgent complaints to your brain. You try to imagine what your feet looked like before the army. Soft, innocent, with hopes and dreams. Sad. As you trudge through a narrow trail filled with rocks specifically shaped to cause pain, the soldier behind you mutters, "I swear the earth is trying to kill us." You nod. "Feels personal." He replies, "Historians still argue whether the Romans chose these routes for speed or because someone hated human ankles." You suspect the latter. After hours of marching, the centurion finally calls a halt. You collapse onto a rock. You remove your sandal. You instantly regret removing your sandal. Your heel is a battlefield. Blisters upon blisters. Layers of raw skin. Dust stuck to sweat. And one patch that looks suspiciously like it's considering rebellion. The soldier next to you does the same and whispers, "I think mine's developing teeth." Another soldier pulls a thorn from his foot with the same expression someone might wear while confessing a crime. A fourth is wrapping his toes in scraps of cloth that used to be part of his tunic. The veteran simply dumps a handful of salt water on his blistered foot and hisses through his teeth like an angry snake. You look around. This is not a unit of elite warriors. This is a travelling foot injury festival. But rest never lasts. The horn blows again. You cry internally, and then you stand. The march continues. Your body protests every step. At some point, the pain stops feeling sharp and becomes dull, rhythmic, constant, almost hypnotic. Step, wince, step, wince. A new routine. A sad one, but a routine nonetheless. You pass a mile marker. Someone asks, "How far now?" The veteran answers, "Far enough." You do not appreciate the vagueness. The scenery blurs. Your thoughts blur. Your feet feel swollen, throbbing, shaped like broken fruit. But you keep marching. Because that's the rule. Not a written rule. Not an official command. Just the quiet law every legionary knows. Pain doesn't stop the march. Pain joins the march. By the time you reach the next camp location, the sun is lowering and the world feels wobbly. You drop your pack and sit with a groan loud enough to scare a nearby mule. The veteran lowers himself beside you, massages his calf, and mutters, "Congratulations, you survived another light march." You laugh weakly. It sounds like a dying flute. He nods toward your feet. "Don't worry. Eventually you stop feeling the pain." You perk up slightly. "Oh," he shrugs, because everything goes numb. Comforting. You clean your feet as best you can, wrap the worst blisters, pull your sandals back on, and lie down in the tent as the night wind picks up. Your feet throb, your legs ache, your back complains, your mind floats somewhere between exhaustion and resignation. And yet, you made it. Because Roman soldiers didn't stop marching when they were tired. They stopped marching when Rome said so. And Rome, unfortunately for your feet, is never in a hurry to show mercy. By the time you've dragged your battered feet through another morning of marching and another hour of grumbling, the landscape begins to change. Not gradually, not politely, but abruptly, like the world took one look at you and thought, "Let's make this harder." The trees thin, the wind sharpens, and suddenly you feel it. You've reached the edge of nowhere. Because today you discover the unique misery of being stationed at a Roman frontier, one of those bleak, lonely, desolate borders where the empire technically exists on maps, but emotionally, it has abandoned you. A mainstream historical fact settles in your mind as you stare across the bleak horizon. Much of Rome's military strength was stationed not in glamorous cities or sunny Mediterranean ports, but in remote outposts along rivers, mountains, marshlands, and fog-drenched forests. Places where civilization felt more like a rumour. Places where you can walk for miles without seeing anything that wasn't trying to bite you. You trudge forward onto a plain so empty it feels suspicious. Even the wind sounds bored. The veteran points toward a crooked watchtower in the distance, leaning, weather-beaten, looking like it regrets its career choices. "That's our lovely new home," he announces dryly. You squint. "That?" "Yes." "It looks like it wants to fall over," he nods. "It's very welcoming that way." As you approach, the place becomes even less appealing. The camp is small and ragged, surrounded by a wooden palisade that probably would not stop anything determined. Inside, a dozen weary-looking soldiers move about with the slow, zombie-like motions of men who've been quietly suffering for months. One of them looks at your fresh-faced unit and whispers to his friend, "Oh gods, replacements." The friend replies, "Don't scare them yet, they'll find out soon." Comforting. The centurion leads you inside. The air is colder here, not just physically but emotionally. It has that heavy, lonely quality of a place forgotten by the world. As you drop your pack, the silence hangs thick around you. No bustling markets, no taverns, no laughter. Just wind, fences, and the faint, distant howl of something that is definitely not friendly. A soldier at the gate mutters, "Welcome to the frontier. Population regretting it." You're assigned living space in a cramped barracks hut that smells like old boots, damp wood, and emotional decay. The bunks are rough planks with a thin straw layer. You drop onto one and instantly feel every splinter through the mat. The veteran notices your look and shrugs. "Better than some places. In Germania we slept in trenches for weeks." You do not want trench comparisons right now. During the afternoon break you wander to the edge of camp. The land stretches endlessly. Grey sky, swaying grasses, distant silhouettes of twisted trees. No roads, no villages, nothing to break the monotony except the creeping sense that you're incredibly far from anything resembling comfort. "Why would Rome build here?" you ask aloud. Another soldier overhears and answers simply, "Because someone told them to." Fair enough. Your quirky tidbit arrives in the form of an older legionary sitting on a crate peeling hard cheese with a knife. Some posts are so remote we make up names for the local spirits. My last fort had a ghost we called Barry. Barry hated sleep. You stare at him. What did Barry do? He shrugs. Mostly rattled doors and ruined morale. A haunting ghost named Barry. Wonderful. After midday drills, you're assigned to a frontier watch shift. You stand on the wall next to a soldier who looks like he's been awake for several years. "Anything out there?" you ask. He sweeps his gaze across the emptiness. Usually no, sometimes yes, both are unsettling. You stand silently together. The wind whistles through the palisade cracks. Somewhere far off, branches snap. You flinch. The soldier pats your shoulder. "Relax, could be a deer." And if it's not a deer, he shrugs, then it's something else. Very reassuring. Historians still argue whether frontier life strengthened legionary discipline or destroyed morale. But as you stare into the endless grey, feeling isolation creep through your armour, you're pretty sure you know the answer. During evening meal, a bowl of thick, unidentifiable stew you decide not to question. You overhear frontier veterans swapping stories. "Last week I swear I saw something watching us from the tree line." You say that every week, because every week something is. "Oh, shut up." Another group complains about the weather. Another debates whether the latrine should be moved. It should. One man insists he saw footprints too large to belong to any normal animal. Another begs him to stop talking before nightfall. This place feels different from regular marching camps, different from the bustle of temporary encampments, different from training grounds filled with noise and activity. This place feels forgotten. You lie down that night in the barracks listening to the wind push against the shutters. The wood creaks. Someone snores in a way that sounds like distress. Something scuttles along the ceiling. Someone mutters a prayer in the dark, and for the first time you feel it fully. The frontier isn't just remote, it's lonely, deeply, profoundly lonely. You hug your cloak a little closer, you listen to the emptiness outside, and you realize there's no one here to save you, no city walls to hide behind, no bustling crowds to blend into. Just you, a handful of soldiers, and the thin barrier between Rome and everything Rome fears. Your feet may be broken, your back may ache, your stomach may churn from bad rations. But now the misery gains a new companion. That quiet, creeping sense that you are very, very far from home. You wake to a fog so thick it feels like the entire world is wrapped in damp wool. The huts disappear into the grey, the palisade fades into nothingness, and even the soldier snoring 2 bunks away looks like a ghostly blur. The frontier already felt lonely yesterday. Now it feels like the universe has misplaced you entirely. You step outside, shivering as the cold mist clings to your skin. Shapes move in the fog, shadows, outlines, figures that might be soldiers, or might not. Every sound is muffled. Every movement is suspicious. As you squint into the haze, you realize something unsettling. You can't tell who's Roman and who's not, because today you discover one of the strangest stresses of frontier life. Your allies might be allies or not, depending on the hour. A mainstream historical fact circles in your mind. Rome's frontiers were filled with auxiliary troops, non-Roman recruits from conquered or allied tribes. They were essential to the army, skilled, fierce, familiar with local terrain, but also culturally different, strategically independent, occasionally unpredictable, and the Romans did not always treat them with gentle warmth. You walk toward the fog-shrouded gate where 2 auxiliaries are already on duty, men from a local tribe, wearing patchwork armour and cloaks decorated with patterns you don't understand. One has painted symbols on his face, the other carries a spear taller than you. They glance at you, not hostile, not friendly, just evaluating. "Morning," you say softly. Neither responds. You immediately regret speaking. The veteran approaches and leans close to whisper, "Don't worry, they're good men. They just don't like mornings, or Romans, or fog, or being stationed here." Well, that's comprehensive. As the sun rises, more auxiliaries appear through the mist. Archers with wolf fur collars, riders with painted shields, spearmen with hairstyles that defy Roman regulations. They talk among themselves in rapid, clipped syllables. Occasionally they laugh at something you don't understand. One gestures at your sandals, makes a joke, and his friend snorts loudly. You don't know what they said, but you strongly suspect your footwear was just insulted. During morning watch, you're paired with an auxiliary named Virak. He is tall, he is silent, he is staring at you as if trying to determine whether you're going to slow him down or simply die. So, you attempt, "How long have you been stationed here?" He blinks slowly. 3 years. "Do you like it?" "No." Conversation over. You stand together on the rampart, listening to the wind whistle through the palisade. After a long silence, Verrick gestures toward the distant tree line. "Your people never watch the corners," he says bluntly. "What corners?" "Exactly." You make a mental note to watch more corners. By midday, the fog lifts, and the auxiliaries begin their training. Their drills look utterly different from Roman. Buns, looser, faster, more instinctive. Their footwork is strange to you. Their swords curve differently. Their spears are longer, their shields narrower. You observe them while tightening your armor straps, trying not to appear like you're judging or confused. A group of Roman legionaries watches too, whispering, "They don't even hold their shields properly. Look at that stance. Wrong, all wrong. They're going to get someone killed." Meanwhile, a group of auxiliaries watches you, whispering, "Romans are so stiff. Why do they walk like that? Do they even know how to track anything bigger than a goat?" The cultural divide is obvious. Then comes afternoon assignment, mixed patrol duty. You're placed in a patrol with 3 Romans and 4 auxiliaries. Great. Perfect. Nothing could possibly go wrong here. The auxiliary leader, a stone-faced man named Durnak, gestures toward the forest. "We go this way," he says. The Roman Optio immediately shakes his head. "No, we follow the marked trail." Durnak scowls. "Your trail is loud." The Optio stiffens. Our trail is safe." The two men stare at each other like angry statues. Eventually they compromise, a path that is neither safe nor quiet. Wonderful. As you walk between the two groups, you feel the tension. Romans liking order, auxiliaries liking intuition, Romans wanting formations, auxiliaries wanting freedom of movement. You're caught between two entirely different philosophies, Roman rigidity versus tribal adaptability. A quirky tidbit surfaces as one auxiliary casually mentions, "Once, in my village, we trained by chasing boars barefoot. Very good for reflexes." The Roman beside him replies dryly, "We trained by marching in circles until our souls left our bodies." Both nod as if these activities are equally reasonable. The deeper you go, the stranger the atmosphere becomes. The auxiliaries move through the brush silently, blending with the trees. The Romans clatter and crunch with every step. You try to imitate Verrec's smooth stride. Instead, you trip over a root and nearly die. Verrec mutters, "Romans are loud." The Optio mutters, "Auxiliaries are rude." You mutter, "I want to go home." As evening approaches, everyone's nerves sharpen. The auxiliaries keep watching the shadows. The Romans keep checking the map. Durnac stops suddenly, raising a hand. Everyone freezes. He listens for a long moment, tilting his head. Then he says quietly, "Nothing." The Romans relax. Then he adds, "To nothing." You retention every muscle in your body. Even the forest seems to hold its breath. Historians still argue whether mixed frontier units strengthened the legions or made internal friction worse. All you know is that walking side by side with people who barely tolerate your marching style is exhausting in its own special way. Finally, after what feels like a century of mutual eye-rolling and silent accusations, the patrol ends, and you return to camp. You collapse near the fire. Verrec sits across from you, sharpening his spear. After a long, heavy silence, he says, "You walk badly." You sigh. "Thank you." He nods. "But your shield wall is good." You blink. "Thank you." He shrugs. "Maybe we don't hate each other." It's the closest thing to friendship you'll get today. You settle beside the fire, listening to the mingled conversations, Romans speaking Latin, auxiliaries speaking their own languages, cultures blending just enough to function. Tomorrow you'll patrol together again. Tomorrow you'll disagree again. Tomorrow you'll rely on each other again. Allies who aren't quite allies. Strangers who must trust each other anyway. Welcome to the frontier. Night falls strangely on the frontier. Not sudden, not gentle, just a creeping dimness that wraps around the camp like a closing fist. The fire pits glow, crackling softly, and soldiers drift into their routines, mending gear, whispering gossip, staring into the flames like philosophers who've given up. You feel yourself settling, shoulders loosening, stomach calming. Just a little. And then, thunk. Something hits the outer palisade. The entire camp freezes. Because tonight, you learn the oldest, quietest truth of frontier life. The most terrifying enemies are the ones you never see. A mainstream historical fact surfaces immediately. Rome's frontier regions, especially Germania, Britannia, Dacia, and the Danube line, were plagued by ambushes, raids, and probing attacks by small bands of enemy warriors who struck from the shadows. They rarely fought in open battle. They preferred silence, surprise, and the art of vanishing. Exactly the kind of threat that makes your heart try to crawl up your throat. You grab your shield, you grab your gladius. Your breath grows shallow as another thunk echoes from the darkness. The auxiliaries react first. They always do. They melt into motion with unnerving speed. Bows drawn, spears angled, eyes narrow, silent as ghosts. The Roman soldiers follow, forming a makeshift shield line in front of the gate. You shuffle into place. Your hands tremble a little. "Probably nothing," the centurion says, which in Roman military language means probably something horrific. Everyone waits. The night presses in, heavy and humming, filled with that kind of silence that's almost a sound. Someone whispers that it might have been an animal. Someone else whispers that animals don't throw things. You swallow hard. Minutes crawl by. Nothing happens. Eventually the centurion dismisses everyone with a gruff wave, but no one really relaxes. Because the invisible enemy, the one out there in the dark, watching, waiting, that enemy stays with you long after you leave the rampart. Later, as you stand second watch, you stare into the tree line. The moon hides behind clouds, turning the world into a grey blur. The trees sway in the wind, bending and twisting like figures in cloaks. You grip your spear tighter. Beside you, the auxiliary Verak scans the horizon with the patience of someone who grew up reading the land like a book. You whisper, "Do you see anything?" He answers, "Always." "Perfect. That's comforting." In the distance, something crackles. A twig, an animal, a person. Verak raises a hand, a silent warning. Your heart stutters. You squint until your eyes ache, trying to pierce the gloom. You see nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet Verak's posture tells you something is there, or was there, or might be there again. The quiet is sharp enough to cut. A quirky tidbit surfaces from Verak in a low murmur. "My grandfather said forest spirits hide in silence. If the night grows too quiet, they're listening." You manage a whisper. "That's great. Thank you for that." He shrugs. "Just saying." You suddenly miss loud cities. Moments stretch. The wind rustles. Then, nothing. Again. You realize that on the frontier, uncertainty is its own kind of attack. You start imagining shapes in the dark, shadows slipping between trees, silhouettes that vanish when you blink. Your brain becomes its own enemy, supplying horrors with impressive creativity. Hours later, the watch ends. You exhale in relief that feels too dramatic for standing still in the dark. You head back to the barracks, slipping inside quietly. Half the men are asleep, half pretending to be. Someone snores softly. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone whispers, "Did you hear that earlier?" Someone else whispers, "Don't talk about it." Then, another noise. This one faint, like something scraping along the outer fence. Every soldier in the barracks goes still. No one rises. No one speaks. Everyone just listens. The scraping stops. Someone whispers, "Maybe it was the wind." A veteran across the room mutters, "Wind doesn't scrape." Historians still argue whether frontier threats were constant or sporadic. Some say raids were rare. Others say they were frequent. But all agree on one thing. The fear never really leaves. You lie down, trying to steady your breath. You close your eyes tightly, as if squeezing them shut might block out the entire wilderness. Your fingers curl under your blanket, still trembling from the adrenaline. Minutes pass, then hours. Eventually your body gives into exhaustion. But even as sleep pulls you under, your mind whispers a truth you cannot unhear. Out here, the enemy doesn't need to attack. They just need to remind you they're watching, and that is enough. Morning doesn't feel like morning. It feels like you've been dragged out of a shallow, uneasy half-sleep by someone shaking your soul instead of your shoulders. You blink at the ceiling of the barracks, disoriented, your body stiff, your mind foggy. It takes a moment to remember why you slept so badly. And then the night returns to you in a cold wave. The scraping on the palisade, the hush that fell over the men, the feeling of eyes in the dark. You push yourself up slowly, bones creaking, head heavy. And as you step outside into the pale grey dawn, an even more miserable truth hits you. You're not just tired, you're sick. It's not dramatic. Not yet. It's the subtle kind of sick that crawls in quietly. A scratchy throat, chills that don't match the weather, a dull ache behind your eyes, a heaviness in your limbs that's more than exhaustion. Roman military life has finally caught up with your immune system, and you're not alone. Because today you face a misery Roman soldiers dreaded even more than ambushes or punishment, disease spreading through the ranks. A mainstream historical fact rises grimly in your thoughts. Disease was the single greatest killer of Roman soldiers. Not enemy swords, not barbarian raids, not brutal marches. Disease, camp diseases, frontier fevers, foodborne illnesses, infected wounds, parasites, drinking water contamination, an entire buffet of biochemical betrayal. You sit on a crate, rubbing your forehead. Your stomach churns gently. You cough once, twice. It echoes pathetically through your chest. The soldier beside you sniffles loudly. Another wipes his nose on his sleeve. A third is crouched over behind the latrine fence, clearly regretting his life choices. "Morning plague," the veteran says, limping over with a bowl of lukewarm porridge. "It's not a plague," you mumble. He shrugs. Historians still argue whether we ever had small outbreaks, or if everything was just called a plague because it made us miserable. You're too tired to laugh. You force breakfast down anyway because you need the calories, but it tastes worse today. Mushier, more sour, more, "I hate myself." You cough again, clutch your ribs as it stings, and try not to imagine your illness getting worse. By mid-morning, the full extent of the sick epidemic becomes painfully clear. A line of soldiers shuffles toward the camp's makeshift medicus tent. A sad canvas structure with a leaning table, a few bronze tools, and a smell that suggests sterile was not part of ancient vocabulary. The medicus, a thin man with permanently anxious eyes, moves between patients with frantic efficiency. His assistant hovers nearby holding a bucket of water that looks like it's contemplating retirement. You watch as the medicus examines a soldier with a fever so high, his face glows like a tomato left too long in the sun. Another man coughs so violently your ribs hurt in sympathy. A third has some sort of rash, spreading across his arm that looks like a map of a poorly drawn island. "Next," the medicus calls, pointing at you. "Wonderful." You step inside. He presses a hand to your forehead, frowns, pokes your ribs, examines your throat with a wooden spatula that looks suspiciously like a repurposed spoon, and finally grumbles, "You're not dying, just miserable. Drink water. Rest. Don't breathe on anyone." That last one seems impractical. He doesn't smile. At all. He reaches into a jar, scoops out a mixture that smells like crushed weeds and disappointment, and hands it to you. Tea? Probably. Boil it. Probably don't die. Comforting. As you leave, the veteran claps your shoulder. "See? Could be worse." You raise an eyebrow. He adds, "Once I saw a man cough so hard he passed out into a pile of spears." This does not make you feel better. You return to duty because rest in the Roman army is a myth, much like spare time or reasonable footwear. During shield drills, your nose runs. During spear practice, you sneeze so explosively that 3 men jump and 1 auxiliary instinctively reaches for his bow. Your centurion frowns. "Are you ill?" "No, sir," you croak, voice cracking like a dropped clay pot. He squints. "You look ill." "I promise I'm not." He shrugs. "Good. Illness is contagious. Weakness is not." You do not correct him. By midday you feel worse. Not dramatically worse, just heavier, foggier, slower. Your throat burns, your legs drag, your face feels warm, your ears ring faintly whenever the centurion yells, which is often. Fog rolls in again around the camp, mixing with the haze in your head. You start seeing tiny movements in the corner of your eye, shadows of shadows. Probably normal, probably nothing. Probably your brain trying to abandon ship. A soldier trudges beside you, coughing wretchedly. Another one blows his nose in a way that could be classified as warfare. The veteran mutters, "If one sick man sleeps near you, all of you get sick." Someone else responds, "It's a disease pyramid scheme." The medicus walks past holding herbs, shaking his head. "These men," he mutters, "are going to kill me before the enemy does." That evening the cold settles deep into your bones. You huddle near the fire, sipping the weird herbal concoction the medicus gave you. It tastes like boiled weeds marinated in regret. But after a few sips, your head clears. Barely. Around the flames, men complain in raspy voices. My throat feels like I swallowed a torch. My head is ringing like temple bells. My stomach sounds like it's debating something. I think my feet are sick too. That's not how sickness works. It is now. Someone else murmurs, "Do you think the spirit sent this illness?" A soldier responds, "No, I think the water barrel did." Another whispers, "Historians still argue if these frontier fevers came from swamps or from us living like sardines." You agree internally, both seem correct. You crawl into your bunk early, shivering. Your blankets feel thin, your chest tight, your throat raw. Around you, coughing becomes a chorus. Sharp coughs, wet coughs. Coughs that sound like they're trying to escape the body entirely. You curl up, pulling your cloak over your shoulders, praying for sleep but fearing the night's quiet. You hear someone groan, someone else mutter a fevered dream. Someone whisper a prayer you recognize even though you don't speak the language. And through it all you feel it. Your body is falling apart, one ache, one fever, one cough at a time. Yet tomorrow you'll drill, you'll march, you'll carry gear, you'll watch the woods again. Because sickness doesn't stop the legion, it merely slows its footsteps, barely. You close your eyes, shivering slightly, and hope the sunrise finds you still breathing. You wake in the kind of foggy daze that makes you wonder if you slept at all, or if you just lay there, shivering, blinking at the darkness, trying not to cough loud enough to wake the entire barracks. Your head feels stuffed with wool. Your joints ache in ways that feel both ancient and personal. And somewhere beneath all of that, there's a deeper ache, one you've been quietly ignoring. Homesickness. Not the dramatic, romanticized kind. Not the tearful, write a letter to mother kind. No, this is the slow, creeping, uncomfortable ache that sneaks in when your body is weak, your mind is tired, and the world around you feels too far from anything familiar. You sit up on your bunk. The cold air bites your skin. Someone in the next row coughs hard enough to shake dust from the rafters. Another groans and rolls over, and you think of home. Not because you choose to, because your mind is desperate for something that doesn't hurt. A mainstream historical fact flickers quietly in your memory. Roman soldiers often served 20 years or more, stationed far from their birthplace, rarely allowed to visit home, and often unsure if they'd ever see their families again. Letters could take months. Some never arrived. Some were never sent. Some weren't read because the recipients couldn't read. You lie back again, staring at the ceiling beams, and wonder if the people you left behind even know where you are now. By mid-morning, you're back on your feet. You shouldn't be. You're still sick. Your legs wobble. Your throat burns. But the Centurion doesn't care about your emotions, internal or otherwise. As you join a work detail gathering firewood beyond the palisade, something strange happens. For the first time, the endless trees, the biting wind, the unfamiliar land, it all feels hostile in a new way. Not because of the enemy, not because of the weather, but because it isn't home. One soldier trudging beside you mutters through a clogged nose, "I miss my wife's stew." Another says, "I miss losing. Arguments with my brother." A third whispers, "I miss sleeping without wondering what's watching us." You nod because your own memories rise gently like warm air. The smell of baking bread drifting from the neighbour's house, the shout of children running down the street, the uneven cobbles outside your old doorway, the soft clatter of pottery in the mornings, the stupid little dog that barked at everything except danger. You shake the thoughts away. Sort of. Not really. Homesickness has sharp edges. As you gather firewood, Verrick, the auxiliary who speaks in blunt truths, watches you for a moment before saying, "You think of home today." It's not a question. You sigh. "How do you know?" You look like someone listening for a voice that isn't here. He drops a branch onto the pile and continues casually. "My village is 5 days that way." He gestures toward the northern mountains. "But I haven't seen it in 6 years. If I went back now, half the people would treat me like a stranger." You blink, surprised. "You don't miss it?" He shrugs. Missing and returning are two different things. The veteran nearby chimes in. "Home changes. You change. That's the curse of long service." You swallow, because something in his tone hits too close. A quirky tidbit drifts into the conversation as another auxiliary adds, "In my tribe, they say a warrior who leaves comes back with 2 spirits. The one he left with and the one he earned." You raise an eyebrow. "Which one wins?" He grins sadly. "Whichever one hurts less." You don't like that answer. Because right now, everything hurts. The march back to camp is quiet, not the usually tense kind of quiet, but the heavy, introspective kind. Men keep their heads down, no jokes, no complaints, just footsteps and sniffles and deep contemplative misery. Even the Centurion seems to sense the mood. He doesn't shout, he doesn't correct. He just watches, eyes tired, expression unreadable. You wonder, for the first time, if even he gets homesick. Back inside the walls, you sit near the fire, holding your cup of diluted wine for warmth more than taste. The flames flicker gold and orange, and the soft crackle reminds you of the small hearth your mother used to cook over. You can almost smell the broth, almost hear her voice, almost feel the warmth of the clay floor beneath your feet. You blink it away before it settles. Homesickness is a dangerous luxury out here. Too much of it cracks your discipline. Too much of it slows your stride. Too much of it makes the silence after nightfall feel unbearably loud. As the fire fades, someone begins humming a tune, a low, soft melody from some distant province. Another soldier joins in with a different tune that somehow blends with the first. A third begins tapping rhythm on his shield. Soon, the entire fire circle hums and taps in a mismatched, strangely comforting patchwork of home sounds. You close your eyes. For a brief moment, the frontier doesn't feel so empty. The night doesn't feel so long. Your chest doesn't feel so tight. You open your eyes again, slowly, as the embers glow warm on weary faces. Homesickness doesn't vanish. It never will. But now you understand something the older soldiers already know. You don't survive the Legion by forgetting home. You survive by carrying it quietly inside you, like a small flame that refuses to die, even when everything else feels cold. The morning horn yanks you out of a half-dream about warm bread and familiar streets, a dream so vivid you can almost taste it before it dissolves into the cold, grey air of the frontier. You blink hard, rubbing your eyes, unsure which hurts more, your feet, your throat, or the quiet ache in your chest where home used to sit. Then you remember the next misery on Rome's list, the one no recruiter ever mentioned, the one soldiers whisper about like a shared curse, your pay, or rather, the shocking lack of it. You step outside the barracks, cloak wrapped tight against the chilly wind. The camp is already alive with movement, coughing soldiers dragging themselves to formation, auxiliaries sharpening blades, mules looking offended at the concept of mourning. And at the centre of it all stands the pay officer's tent, a small table, a ledger, a lockbox that looks heavy enough to hold your hopes and dreams. But you already know better. A mainstream historical fact flickers like a candle in your mind. Roman soldiers did get paid, technically, but deductions for equipment, food, clothing, fines, and administrative adjustments often left recruits with shockingly little actual money. Some earned so little that they went into debt while serving the empire. You join the line, a long, slow, depressing line. One soldier mutters, "Maybe this month I'll actually be able to buy extra bread." Another replies, "Dream big, Marcus, dream big." The veteran beside you snorts. First rule of payday, expect disappointment. Second rule, expect more disappointment. Your stomach sinks. When you finally reach the table, the pay officer barely glances up. He flips through the ledger with a bored sigh. Name? You tell him. He scribbles something, checks a column, then hands you a handful of coins so small you briefly wonder if he miscounted. That's it? You ask. He doesn't look offended. He doesn't even look up. He simply says, "Deductions." You swallow. For what? Equipment maintenance, camp supplies, uniform repair, bread allotment, horse feed. "I don't have a horse," he shrugs. "Administrative fee." You stare at the coins in your palm. They look like the sort of payment someone would offer you for retrieving their lost goat. Absolutely not the hard-earned wages for marching across hostile terrain with feet held together by willpower and weak leather. You shuffle away, dazed. The soldier behind you receives even less. He stares at his coins and whispers, "This feels personal." The pay officer responds, "It isn't. It's like this for everyone." Somehow that's worse. Later, sitting by the fire, you examine your coins again. You turn them over, you count them, you recount them, as if staring long enough might make them multiply. It does not. A nearby auxiliary named Varak glances over. "That all they gave you?" You nod. He scoffs. "Romans act like gold grows legs and runs away." "Does yours pay better?" you ask. He shrugs. "Sometimes. Sometimes we get land instead." Land sounds nice. Unless the land is swamp. Good point. Another soldier sits beside you, rubbing his temples. "I wanted to send money home this month." You hesitate. "Can you?" He shakes his head. "Not unless my family enjoys receiving 2 copper coins and a note that says sorry." A few men laugh, but it's not cheerful laughter. More like, if we don't laugh, we'll cry. By midday, talk of pay spreads through the camp like smoke. Some soldiers curse under their breath. Others argue loudly about corruption in supply lines. One man insists the quartermaster is skimming coins. Another swears the officers take their share before distribution. The veteran shakes his head. Don't blame the officers. The money comes from Rome long before they touch it. You ask, "So where does all the missing pay go?" He shrugs. "Into the ether, or someone's pocket. Hard to tell. A quirky tidbit emerges from a soldier cleaning his shield. I heard one emperor tried to fix soldier pay by reducing deductions. Then the accountants revolted. You blink. Accountants revolted? He nods solemnly. Terrifying men. The worst part? There are soldiers who earn real money. Veterans, officers, specialists. You watch them stroll by with heavier purses and lighter moods. A centurion walks past, his armor polished, his sandals new, his purse jingling with the confidence of someone who has never worried about buying extra bread. Meanwhile, you sit on a crate, staring at your little pile of coins like they're the ashes of a dream. Then the veteran claps you on the shoulder. Listen, he says, pay gets better, eventually. When? He thinks for a moment. After 10 years. You stare at him. He nods, give or take. You're unsure whether to laugh or run away into the wilderness. In the evening, during a rare moment of calm, you sit beside the fire and try to imagine a future where your pay actually means something. Where you can buy warm clothes, better sandals, or maybe even send money back home. But for now you tuck the few coins into your pouch. They clink sadly. Your stomach growls. Your throat still aches from sickness. Your feet still throb from marching. Your heart still pulls toward home. And through all of it, you realize you aren't here for the money. You're here because Rome expects you to endure everything, even this. You lie on your straw-filled bunk that night, cloak pulled over your shoulders, thinking about what you could have done with a fair wage. Food, warmth, letters home, maybe even a decent pair of sandals. But instead, you have 7 coins and 2 blisters the size of Asia Minor. Welcome to Roman military economics. The morning begins with a chill that crawls straight into your bones, but that isn't what wakes you. It's the voice. That sharp, barked command slicing across the barracks. Up! Move! Now! You jolt upright, bumping your head on the bunk above you. Pain explodes in your skull. Someone curses. Someone else rolls onto the floor. And in the doorway stands the reason your nerves have never known peace. Your commander. Today, you learn another misery that Roman soldiers endured far more often than outsiders realize. One that doesn't involve weather, hunger, or marching. Commanders whose demands stretch your patience, sanity, and will to live. You stumble outside into the cold, joining the formation that's assembling far too quickly for your foggy mind. The centurion, your immediate tormentor, paces before the line with the confidence of a man who has never once carried a full pack or slept on a straw mat. His armor gleams, his boots are spotless, his vine stick taps ominously against his palm. Today, he announces, we are correcting errors. The entire century silently panics. A mainstream historical fact surfaces grimly. Roman centurions were infamous for strictness. Their discipline kept the army strong, but their tempers kept soldiers terrified. Many were veterans who earned their position through decades of service. Others, however, were promoted politically or through connections, leading to wildly unpredictable expectations. You stand rigid as he inspects each man, eyes narrow, hunting for imperfections. He stops at you. Your cloak is slightly crooked. Just slightly. He taps your shoulder with the vine stick. Bonk. Fix it, he says simply. You swallow, adjust it, and hope that's the end of it. It is not. You, he barks at another soldier. Your helmet strap is loose. Bonk. And you, did you polish your shield? Bonk. And you, your posture is slouching. Bonk, bonk. He apparently enjoys the sound. By the time he reaches the end of the line, every soldier looks like a child trying to impress a terrifying schoolmaster. Drills begin immediately. Not normal drills. Not that we've done this every day for months drills. No, today as commander is in a bad mood drills. You march in circles. You practice shield formations non-stop. You repeat thrusts until your arm vibrates. You jog uphill carrying stones. You stand at attention so long your knees begin to wobble. You cough once, just once, because your throat still hasn't recovered from illness. The centurion whirls toward you. Do you find this training tiring? No, sir. Then why are you wheezing? Breathing, sir. Loud breathing. You decide not to argue. Your quirky tidbit of the day comes from a soldier whispering behind you. Some commanders used to punish entire centuries if one man sneezed during inspection. You murmur, horrified, "Did that actually happen?" He shrugs. Historians still argue if it was punishment or just bad timing. By midday, the centurion is replaced by a tribune, a higher-ranking officer visiting from a more civilized post. You instantly recognize the type: perfectly clean sandals, oil-perfumed hair, teeth too white for frontier living. He looks around camp like someone touring a disappointing vineyard. "Morale seems low," he says thoughtfully. Everyone stares. Of course morale is low. We live here. Then he asks, "Why is this wall crooked?" It isn't crooked. At all. The centurion stiffens. "We can correct it." You inwardly scream. The tribune continues strolling, offering incredible pearls of wisdom such as, "You should train harder. You should keep the camp cleaner. You should reduce illness. You should march faster." All solutions that require zero effort from him. By the time he leaves, the entire camp has aged 10 years. After lunch, which is 2 spoonfuls of sadness, the centurion returns with renewed fury. "New orders from above," he announces. "We drill until sunset." A collective internal groan ripples through the ranks. You thrust your sword until your arms burn. You march until your toes go numb. You drill formations until your brain melts. At one point, you're so exhausted that your shield sags half an inch. Half an inch. The centurion is instantly there. Bonk. "Do you need assistance holding your shield?" You gasp. "No, sir," he nods. "Good. I was not offering help." You're pretty sure sarcasm existed in ancient Rome specifically because of centurions. Evening arrives. The sun sinks. Your body feels hollowed out. Your mind is mush. You try to return to your tent, but no. Your commander calls you over again. "You," he says, pointing at your sandals, "retie those straps. A soldier must look ready even when exhausted." "Yes, sir." "And clean your armor before sleep." "Yes, sir." "And prepare for an early inspection tomorrow." You nearly collapse. "Yes, sir." He walks away. The veteran appears beside you, placing a sympathetic hand on your shoulder. "Don't take it personally," he says. "Commanders are born angry. It's their nature." You manage a faint groan. He adds, "At least our centurion isn't one of the screamers." You blink. "There are screamers?" "Oh yes. Some scream so much their voices crack. One I met sounded like a dying goat. You snort despite yourself. That night, as you clean your armor by firelight, you think about the strange relationship soldiers have with their commanders. You resent them. You fear them. You depend on them. You even, on rare days, admire them. But mostly they tire you in ways weather and marching never could. You climb into your scratchy bunk, eyes heavy, throat sore, body drained. Outside, the camp quiets. A few murmurs fade. A few fires crackle low. You exhale slowly, a tiny, weary sound. Because tomorrow, you'll face them. Again, their expectations, their commands, their temperaments, and somehow, some impossible way, you'll keep going. You're half asleep when the horn shrieks. Not the gentle morning horn, not the get up and suffer horn, but the one that punches through your ribs and shoots panic straight into your lungs. You stumble upright, heart hammering, hands shaking as you reach for your equipment. The barracks erupts around you, men scrambling for shields, tripping over boots, coughing, shouting, praying. Someone can't find his belt. Someone else puts his helmet on backward. You shove through the doorway into the cold dawn and see it. The entire camp forming up, shields locking together, spears bristling like an iron forest. Because today, finally, terrifyingly, you face what every Roman soldier trains for. Battle. Real battle. And not the glorious kind the poets brag about. The muddy, chaotic, unflattering, miserable truth. A mainstream historical fact hammers in your skull as you take your place in the line. Actual Roman battles were messy, loud, fast, terrifying clashes where perfect formations often disintegrated within minutes. The neat rectangles you practiced? They collapse. The perfect timing? Gone. The cinematic heroics? Non-existent. You swallow hard and try to quiet your breath. Your shield feels too heavy. Your hands feel too cold. Your armor pinches all the wrong places. Your stomach flips like a dropped amphora. "Steady!" the centurion shouts, voice slicing through the rising panic. You tighten your grip. You stare ahead. But all you see is mist and vague shapes moving within it. The auxiliaries tense first. They sense things before Romans do. Then you hear it. Footsteps, rustling, distant shouts, a low rhythmic drumming that might be weapons on shields, or might be your pulse. "Here they come," Verak whispers beside you. Your throat tightens, but you don't have time to feel fear properly, because suddenly, they're there. Not like they appear out of thin air, not dramatically, not heroically. They just rush out of the fog with a horrifying lack of warning, screaming, charging, brandishing axes, spears, blades, and raw fury. Your heart slams against your ribs. Your shield jerks as the line braces. The first impact rattles your entire skeleton. And just like that, formations are gone. Chaos rules. Your first instinct is to run. Your second is to freeze. But your body chooses a third option. You thrust. Clumsily. Desperately. Instinctively. Your gladius hits something. Armor. Flesh. You can't tell. The world becomes noise and breath and fear, all tangled together in one unbearable knot. A soldier to your left shouts something unintelligible. A man to your right drops his shield and is instantly swallowed by the clash. Your own shield slams into an enemy, the force jolting up your arm. The battle smells like sweat, blood, wet earth, and iron. It sounds like metal screaming. It feels like being trapped in a storm made of people. Someone lunges at you. You raise your shield by reflex. The blow nearly knocks you backward. Your ears ring. Your hand tingles. You thrust again. You don't aim. You just hope. Verak appears beside you, moving with a terrifying grace. Shield low, spear darting in precise, brutal motions. He shouts, "Left! Left!" and yanks you aside just as something swings past your face. You gasp. You nod. You try not to collapse. Minutes pass, or hours, or lifetimes. Time in battle dissolves into nothing but survival. You slip in mud. You stumble. Someone slams into your back. Someone screams nearby. A raw, horrible sound you will never forget. A quirky tidbit explodes into your consciousness, absurdly out of place. In some Roman accounts, soldiers admitted they remembered almost nothing from combat except flashes of noise, terror, and the desperate need to breathe. You believe them now, completely, because you aren't fighting a battle, you're drowning in it. Then, as suddenly as it began, the enemy line breaks. Maybe your side pushed through, maybe theirs pulled away, maybe they were probing for weaknesses, maybe Rome scared them off. Historians still argue whether frontier battles were true engagements or just hit-and-run tactics meant to test defences. All you know is that the noise fades, slowly, unevenly, like a dying storm. You find yourself standing knee-deep in mud, panting, shaking, shield trembling in your grasp. Your gladius is dirty, your fingers numb, your eyes stinging from smoke and sweat. Verak limps over, gripping his spears. "You fought," he says. Not praise, not mockery, just a statement of fact. You nod weakly, because you did. Not well, not gracefully, not like the marble statues in Roman forums, but you fought. The centurion marches down the line, face stern but not angry. He looks tired, older, more human than you've ever seen him. "Hold formation," he says quietly. "If they return, we respond." Return? You try not to vomit. Men around you begin murmuring. Shaken voices, trembling breaths, relieved sighs mixed with horror. One soldier sits heavily in the mud, staring at his hands like they belong to someone else. Another keeps repeating, "I thought I was dead. I thought I was dead." Over and over. Someone else walks in circles, dazed. The veteran slumps beside you, wiping dirt from his face. "You survived your first real fight," he says. "How was it?" You open your mouth. Nothing comes out. He nods knowingly. That's the correct reaction. Eventually the order to stand down comes. You stagger back into camp, every muscle shaking. You drop onto a crate and let your shield rest against your knees. No glory, no triumph, no cheering, just exhaustion, just numbness, just the quiet realization. Roman battles weren't heroic. They were terrifying, messy, confusing, painful, and over far too fast for anything to feel meaningful. You lean your head back, exhaling slowly. Your hands are still shaking. Your heart still hasn't slowed. You survived. Barely. Honestly, by luck. And tomorrow, you might have to do it again. You don't remember walking back to the barracks. You don't remember sitting down. You barely remember removing your helmet, though the crease it left on your forehead feels deep enough to store grain in. What you do remember, What you can't shake, no matter how tightly you wrap your cloak around yourself, is the way the battle ended. Abruptly, unevenly, without closure. And now, as the adrenaline drains from your veins and your body starts cataloguing every bruise, ache, and shaking nerve, you discover another misery the poets and historians gloss over: the aftermath. The part no one warns you about. The part that keeps you awake even when your body begs to sleep. A mainstream historical fact flickers in the blur of your thoughts. Roman soldiers were notorious for their discipline during and after battle, forced back into formation, forced to carry on, forced to ignore emotions under layers of duty. But no amount of discipline erases what the body and mind endure in the hours after the fight. You sit outside the barracks with your gladius still in your hand because your fingers haven't gotten the message that the battle is over. Your knuckles are white, your wrist aches, your arm trembles every few seconds with tiny aftershocks. The camp is strangely quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not restful quiet, the heavy kind. The kind that arrives only after something awful passes through. Men shuffle around like ghosts, not speaking much. Some stare at the ground. Some stare into fires that haven't been lit yet. Some stare at nothing at all. Varric passes by, moving stiffly, limping slightly. He stops long enough to press a hand on your shoulder, a quick, grounding gesture, before moving on without a word. You watch him go, throat tight. You try cleaning your sword. The motion is automatic, taught through endless drills. Wipe, oil, check the edge, repeat. But tonight, your hand keeps pausing, mid-wipe, mid-motion, because every time you lower your eyes to the blade, you see flashes of chaos. The blur of bodies, the glint of an axe, the mud splashing up in your face, the scream you prayed wasn't coming from someone you knew. Your stomach clenches. First time is always like this. You look up. The veteran sits on a wooden crate, arms resting on his knees, watching the camp with tired eyes. You swallow. Like what? He scratches his cheek. You're shaking. Can't stop thinking. Everything tastes like copper. Feels like you left part of yourself out there. He pauses. You did. Your chest tightens. You don't ask him what he means. You're not sure you want to know. As evening deepens, the centurion calls for a casualty review. You form up with the others, heart in your throat. You try not to look at the empty spaces, spaces where men should be standing, breathing, cursing, complaining, but aren't. Names are read. Some receive a grunt, a nod, a sigh of relief. Others receive silence. A soldier 2 rows ahead stiffens when his friend's name isn't called back. His jaw trembles. His eyes stay fixed on the ground. No one touches him. No one says sorry. In the Roman army, grief is private, silent, swallowed. The centurion's face is stone, but his voice is lower than usual when he dismisses the formation. You realize even he is shaken under all that iron discipline. Back at the fire, the men sit in uneven circles. No one brags, no one reenacts the fight, no one practices drills with exaggerated flair like boys trying to impress each other. There is only the soft, slow breath of a camp trying to calm itself. Across the firelight, a soldier stares at his hands for so long you start to worry he's forgotten what they're for. Another keeps rubbing his shield's rim over and over, like he's trying to erase something that isn't actually there. A third speaks for the first time since dawn. I thought he was behind me. No one responds. What is there to say? You sip your watered wine. It tastes dull, flat, sad. Later, as you try to rest, something sharp thuds inside your chest, a kind of emotional echo of the fight. Your body thinks you're still out there. Your reflexes keep twitching. Your ears keep detecting sounds that aren't real. Every crack of a fire, every shuffle of a sandal, every cough, every gust of wind brushing the palisade. You jolt. Your hand shoots toward your gladius hilt more than once before you force yourself to breathe. The veteran notices and lies down on the bunk across from you. Your mind's replaying everything, he says simply. You nod. He continues. It'll stop eventually. When? He shrugs. Sooner for some, later for others. Some men carry the first battle with them their whole lives. Your hands tremble again. You pull your cloak tighter. The barracks feels colder than the air outside. Historians still argue whether Roman soldiers processed trauma through stoicism, religion, camaraderie, or simply by burying it under more service. But lying here now, staring at the rafters, You know something for certain. Nothing prepares you for the quiet after violence. Sometime after midnight, you finally drift into a shallow, fragile sleep. You dream of noise. You dream of silence. You dream of running through mud that grips your ankles like hands. You dream of faces, some familiar, some blurred, some yelling, some disappearing into fog. You wake with a start, breath fast, heart heavy, and as you sit there in the darkness, letting the dream dissolve into the shadows, you understand the truth the Legion never says out loud. Surviving the battle is only half the fight. Surviving the hours after, that's the part no one trains you for. You don't bounce back the next morning. No one does. The camp moves like it's underwater, slow, heavy, drained. Even the officers speak in lower tones, as if the entire frontier has slipped into a strange, exhausted hush. You pull yourself out of your bunk, joints stiff, ribs sore, feet aching in that deep, familiar way that says you've been pushing too hard for too long. You step outside and the cold air hits you, clearing just enough fog from your mind to remember what today is. Administrative Day. The day when pay records, service logs, injury notes, and disciplinary marks get updated. The day when reality taps you on the shoulder and whispers, "You will not be a legionary forever." And for the first time, that thought feels less like a distant dream, and more like a question with teeth. Because today you discover a truth far more sobering than anything you've faced so far. Retirement from the Roman army, after 20 years of misery, is no guarantee of comfort, happiness, or even stability. A mainstream historical fact rolls through your mind as you join the slow-moving administrative line. Roman soldiers typically served 20 years before earning land, a pension, or citizenship. On paper, retirement looked rewarding. In reality, it was a gamble. Your feet shuffle, your back twinges, your stomach churns, and the line inches forward. The first soldier in front of you receives his updated records. He squints at the wax tablet. He mutters, "I'm short 2 years." The clerk shrugs. Time was lost during the upriver postings. The soldier stares, horrified. The upriver postings were 4 years. Administrative discrepancy, the clerk says casually. You step backward 1 inch, just 1 inch, fearfully. The veteran behind you pats your shoulder. "Don't worry," he says. "When you're older, you stop worrying about numbers, mostly because your brain stops storing them." You do not find this comforting. Another soldier receives news that his potential land grant has been reassigned to a region he's never heard of. Another is informed that a disciplinary mark from 5 years ago might lower his pension. Another finds out he owes money for equipment depreciation. He curses. The clerk says, "If you don't like it, take it up with Rome," which is the ancient equivalent of "good luck with that." Historians still argue whether veterans truly received the land they were promised, or whether local corruption and chaotic bureaucracy often robbed them of it. You suspect the argument doesn't matter, because even in the ancient world, paperwork was a beast no sword could kill. When your turn arrives, you stand stiffly before the clerk. He looks at you like you're already a burden. He flips through records, mutters, scratches something down, breaks a wax seal, rewrites a number, frowns, rewrites it again, then finally hands you your service record. You scan the tablet, heart pounding. "Is this correct?" you ask. "Probably," the clerk says. "Probably." He shrugs. "Depends on whether the officer before me counted winter postings as full service or half service." Your stomach drops. Why would winter be half service? "Cold weather," he says, waving dismissively. "They said morale was lower, so men worked slower." You stare at him. You consider screaming. Instead, you nod. "Next," he calls. You step aside, strangely lightheaded. Later, you sit by the fire with Verak and the veteran staring at your record. "Do you think," you begin cautiously, "retirement will actually be worth it?" Verak gives a non-committal grunt. "In my tribe, warriors don't retire. They become storytellers, or ghosts, sometimes both." You decide not to ask follow-up questions. The veteran leans in, rubbing his hands over the fire. "Listen," he says, "some veterans get good land, some don't. Some get paid properly, some get cheated. Some end up settling far from home because the Empire dumps them in a new province and says, 'Congratulations, this swamp is now yours.'" Your stomach tightens. He continues. "And when you finally go back to the place you were born, assuming you even can, you realize it's changed. Or you've changed. Or it doesn't feel like home anymore." You swallow hard. The fire crackles. Your mind spins. You picture yourself 20 years from now, older, wearier, bones stiff, scars etched deep, holding a plot of land you never asked for, trying to start a quiet life in a world that moved on without you. You picture another version, returning home only to find that time has erased your place there, both images cut deeper than any spear. In the afternoon, the Centurion gathers the unit for a talk, an extremely rare phenomenon that immediately terrifies everyone. He clears his throat, looking almost human for once. "Some of you are nearing your halfway mark," he says. "Some of you have years ahead. Some will earn your land, some will not. Some will settle near here, some will return home." He pauses. "All of you will leave this army older, stronger, and more tired than you can imagine." You shift uneasily. He adds, softer than you've ever heard him speak, "And no one, not Rome, not your family, not your future, will understand what you endured here except the men standing beside you." The unit is silent. Even the wind seems to pause. And in that stillness, you feel the strange mix of dread and pride woven into the life of a Roman soldier. The knowledge that you are being broken and reforged simultaneously, that the price of serving Rome is paid in years the world will never refund, and that stepping out of the legion may be as frightening as stepping in. Evening falls, the fire warms your hands, your body aches, your mind drifts through futures that feel uncertain and unfamiliar. But one truth settles inside you. Retirement isn't a reward. It's another journey, one you're barely beginning to understand. You pull your cloak tighter as the stars rise above the frontier. 20 years feels impossibly long, and tomorrow will be one day longer. You don't realize it at first. The shift is too subtle. A change in the air, the way the veterans look at you, the way you move through drills without thinking, the way your body strains but no longer breaks. Then one quiet evening, as the sun bleeds into the horizon and the wind hums against the palisade, the truth settles gently onto your shoulders. You're not new anymore. You're a Roman soldier, built through misery, forged through repetition, toughened by days that blurred into months. And now, as you stand on the frontier looking out into the vast wild land beyond Rome's reach, you finally understand why the Empire's enemies feared the Legion. Not because of glory, not because of shining armor or perfect formations, but because of something far more stubborn: endurance. Endurance born from every hardship you've carried. Tonight, with the camp settling into its nightly rhythm, that endurance becomes a quiet presence in your chest, stronger than the aches, heavier than the fear, steadier than the doubts. A mainstream historical fact rises softly in your mind. The Roman army's reputation wasn't built by elite generals or heroic battles alone. It was built by ordinary soldiers enduring years upon years of discomfort, exhaustion, uncertainty, and marching, so much marching, on behalf of a distant empire. You look down at your own hands, rough, scarred, steady. You didn't have hands like this when you arrived. You join the evening patrol, walking the ramparts with Verac and the veteran. The wooden boards creak under your boots, but the sound doesn't unsettle you like it used to. You know this camp now. You know its shadows, its wind patterns, its night calls, its silences. Verac pauses, glancing into the dark. "Something out there," he murmurs. You tighten your grip on your spear. A rustle, a distant crack. You wait, breath held. A deer bursts from the underbrush, bounding across the clearing. Verac snorts. "Fierce enemy." You roll your eyes. "Very intimidating," the veteran smirks. "Send 2 men to negotiate terms." And for the first time in a long while, the laugh that escapes your chest doesn't feel forced. Later, as the patrol ends, you walk down into the camp. Fires flicker. Men talk quietly. Someone tunes a lyre. Poorly. Someone else snores so loudly it could serve as a signal horn. A pot of stew bubbles with a smell that is only mildly concerning. You take it all in. This camp, muddy, freezing, noisy, cramped, exhausting, has become something you never expected. A place you understand. A place where your suffering has meaning. A place where your hardships connect you to every soldier beside you. Not home, not safety, but something closer to belonging. A quirky tidbit comes from a passing auxiliary, who says, "My father used to say misery shared is misery halved." The veteran shrugs. "My father used to say misery shared is just more misery." You grin. Both feel right. The night deepens. You sit near a dying fire, watching embers drift upward like tiny sparks returning to the stars. Around the flames, men share quiet stories. Not dramatic ones, not heroic ones, just small memories of home, hopes for tomorrow, jokes about sandals or commanders or stew that tastes like damp disappointment. You listen, you contribute, you feel connected. The centurion passes by, slower than usual, pausing to look at each man individually. His face is hard, but his eyes, just for a flicker, carry something human. "You fought well," he murmurs to no one in particular. Then he adds, softer, "all of you." It's not praise, it's something better. Acknowledgement. Eventually you rise and walk to the edge of camp, standing beneath the pale moon. The land stretches before you, the same wild, unsettling, indifferent frontier you once feared. Now, though, you face it with different eyes. You know the cold that waits out there. You know the forests whispering with unseen movement. You know the miles of roads that grind your feet into memory. You know the hunger, the longing, the fear, the exhaustion. And despite all of it, or because of all of it, you've endured. Rome wasn't built on triumphs. Rome wasn't built on glory. Rome was built on you, and soldiers like you, holding shields in freezing rain, marching on broken feet, digging trenches in the dark, swallowing bad rations, following harsh commands, carrying memories of battle that never quite fade. Your misery, and the misery of thousands like you, carved the empire's borders. You breathe in the cold air, slowly, deeply, steadily. You're tired, you're sore, you're homesick, you're uncertain of the future, but you're still here, and that relentless, stubborn, unyielding endurance is the true legacy of the Roman soldier. You turn back toward the barracks, cloak fluttering gently in the wind. Tomorrow will be hard. Every day will be hard. But now you understand exactly why the empire endured. It was built by men who endured more. The night air softens as you step inside the tent, leaving behind the vast, shadowed frontier. Everything grows quieter. The distant conversations fade into a low murmur. The clatter of armor becomes a gentle rattle, and even the wind settles into a slow, easy rhythm against the canvas walls. You lower yourself onto your straw mat, feeling the day's weight finally loosen its grip on your shoulders. Your breath slows. The world slows with it. In the dim glow of the dying fire outside, shadows dance in soft, steady patterns, drifting the way embers drift when they're ready to become nothing more than warm dust. You let your body melt into the rough bedding, the ache settling into something manageable, something muted, something that asks nothing more from you. Around you, men breathe deeply, evenly, quietly. Their presence forms a cocoon of shared calm. No shouting, no marching, no commands, just the gentle rise and fall of tired chests, each breath reminding you that for now at least, you are safe. Let the noise of the day slip away. Let the cold fade from your fingers. Let the heaviness in your eyes draw you downward. Outside, the frontier stretches out beneath a sky full of pale stars, but their light feels softer now, distant, harmless. You picture them shimmering silently over empty roads and quiet forests, keeping watch long after you drift into sleep. And as your breath deepens, your mind floats somewhere warm and unhurried, far from drills, far from fear, far from anything sharp or loud, just calm, just rest, just the gentle hum of night. You've endured enough for one day. Now let yourself drift, slowly, quietly, into the soft dark.